12 years of service to the municipality, almost 13. He was the last member of our interim team. When we incorporated in December '99, he was already in place with our interim CAO and our interim corporate officer. And he's offered incredible service to the municipality since then. And I just would like to take a moment to thank Michael and wish him the best.
Okay.
Approval of the agenda. I would ask council to approve the agenda for today's meeting. We have one piece of correspondence on table, and it is from Collen O'Neill, and she'll be speaking to this during her appearance as a delegation.
So moved. Thank you. Second. Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous?
And now we have for adoption 2 sets of minutes. First we have the minutes of April 10th and then the minutes of April 11th. No.
Come on. Allison, are you sure?
No, just a few little format.
The water's good.
Nothing of any substance.
I would suggest that the minutes of the special council meeting held April 10th be adopted.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
And our next set of minutes are the minutes of April 11th. And the recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting held April 11th, 2012 be adopted.
So,
Second.
all those in favor? Oh, did you have something to say?
No, just second.
Pat?
Our next item of business is public comment, and Casey has the speaker's list.
We have one speaker, and that is Bill Granger.
Good morning, Your Worship, members of council, and staff, and the public. I'd like to speak about 3 items on the agenda today. The first is the minutes of the special council meeting, April 11th, resolution number 1279, motion by Councillor Rowe, access to Cape Roger Curtis by Thompson Road, which read adjustments of the current subdivision layout to provide a right-of-way for future access to Thompson. If any access to the approved plan of subdivision is to be adjusted, I'd like to ask why council won't revisit the entire plan and address the issues that were left on the table by the then approving officer. For example, 5% parkland dedication, which kicks in if we go below 2 hectares and lot
Bill,
size.
can you position yourself so we can hear you?
Oh, it's, yes, I could stand at the back of the room, I suppose.
Actually, if you stand over there.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, the parkland dedication or cash in lieu, if lot sizes do go below 2 hectares or meet 2 hectares in size, which is, I think, 4.7 acres, and right now they're 10 acres. So if we half them or a little bit more, then there is a parkland dedication requirement under the Land Titles Act. Secondly, the ocean accesses were really quite a surprise, I think, to us as members of the public and as members of the Cape Roger Curtis Trust Society when they were finally approved. And it turned out that proponents had filed an affidavit with the Land Titles Office indicating that it was in the public interest to reduce the number of road accesses to the ocean front by consolidating them in some way. Which was intended from everything that I have in my records, a waterfront walkway. In fact, we have 3 waterfront accesses at this point in time, and the waterfront walkway is distant from the waterfront. It's defined, it's there as a right-of-way. It's very clear that the municipality has all the responsibility for maintenance ongoing forever for that right-of-way. So that's another area that I think could be revisited if the plan of subdivision is reopened. And finally, enforcement of streamside setbacks for anything that happens in the newer areas, Cape Roger Curtis development area. A My second item is the agenda regular council meeting of today, item number 4, delegations. 4.1, Collen O'Neill is going to appear read options for public consultation at CRC in exchange for community amenities, and her paper was dated May 7, 2012. As you'll see, a meeting was held on site apparently, and a tantalizing variety of possible amenities were discussed, but they would be in return for additional densities. And the cost of that study to be determined is estimated at $4,000 to $5,000 to be split 50-50 by Cape Roger Curtis and Bowen Island Municipality. I personally have serious doubts about the good faith involved in these discussions. However, my major concern is that I don't think we should be doing any cost sharing at all on amenity studies that may or may not come to bear. This council just went through a very detailed and painful budget process, and a lot of items were cut out of our current and operating budget, and I don't think we should be adding new things in. I'm also very concerned if we do look at opening discussions about amenities, that we include fire protection in a real way for Cape Roger Curtis, especially if we do higher densities. At the moment, there is not one fire hydrant within the Cape Roger Curtis development lands. All the fire protection to be provided is sprinklers run from individual wells in individual dwelling units, and if the power goes out, of course, the wells don't run. There's a lot of wildland down there. I know that we are building a second fire hall or a second fire station with the pumper truck in it. I believe that the water for that pumper truck is going to come from fire hall number 1, which means that the water isn't coming from down there. It's going to be tanked down and held in the Quonset fire hall, and that means it's coming out of the Cove Bay water system. So already we're running a deficit of water down there for protection of that area. If some of the amenities do include a continuing care facility, then certainly fire and ambulance are two areas that need to be looked at very, very carefully. And I think particularly fire. I think the fire protection down there right now is deficient, to say the least. And if any additional density is provided, I'm not sure how it will be serviced in terms of public safety. Finally, in terms of opening up community amenities in return for additional density, I don't believe, and a number of people I've spoken to that are very familiar with the official community plan, don't believe that there is any density, any additional density available at Cape Roger Curtis. The official community plan was adopted following the adoption of all the Cape Roger Curtis stuff, and it didn't include any additional density there. We talked about a density bank here on Bowen. We didn't do one. We have the notion of a density bank in the OCP, but there is in fact no density to transfer at this point in time from anywhere down the Cape Roger Curtis. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. Finally, 4.2, the presentation from public forums, consultation process, and Yellow software, which we will be hearing in a few minutes, includes an estimated cost of $24,400, which I assume is being asked from the municipality. And I go back to my earlier comment. I don't think that we should be paying for additional discussion about anything to do with Cape Roger Curtis until, I don't think at this point in time that we, the taxpayers, should be paying any additional costs for Cape Roger Curtis planning. The meeting that was held, which are minuted in the material you have in your agenda, held April 26th, 2012 at Collins Hall, lists a fair process note, which are laudable principles, but they don't describe a full and inclusive community engagement process. And again, I come back to my point, the $24,400 is money that we didn't have to put into our ongoing operation and capital budget, and it's money that we don't have now to put into anything else, especially something that is so unknown in terms of what the outcome might be. Thank you very much for your attention and interest in these matters. I can certainly answer any questions you have.
Would we be able to get a copy of your notes?
You could, I can send it through
That
electronically
would
this
be great,
afternoon.
thank you. I'll forward your comments on to our planning consultant as well.
Good. Thank you very much. No, I do not have any consultant right now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Casey, do we have any more public speakers?
No, that's the one.
Okay. Our next item of business is our delegations, and first up we have Collen O'Neill.
Hello. Mayor Adelar, Council. Thank you for paying attention to this issue. I know how busy you are, and actually, I felt kind of bad yesterday because I called Crow to ask him about the protocol of withdrawing my first letter, and he was busy reading my first letter. Oh, I'm taking up time that I didn't need to take. So, sorry about that. So, I'm submitting a new letter to council and withdrawing the letter that was on the first initial agenda package. That submission, well, I do want to say, I do think there are a lot of opportunities out at the Cape, and I think that it would be a shame to not have the courage and energy to walk down this road. My first submission spoke to the idea of conducting a poll and forming a committee to find out, one, the poll for the appetite in the community for going down this road with density versus amenities, and secondly, to have a committee that would maybe spearhead that. And those requests weren't frivolous, in that both council directed me in some ways, just informally, to take the temperature of the community, and the owners were very clear about not wanting to initiate any kind of formal process without knowing that the community wanted them to do so. So that's why I had those suggestions. However, it is a bit of a moving target, and this past week Councillor Dunn's had 2 meetings with the owners, and the goalposts have changed a little bit. I think given the complexities of trying to reinvent the neighborhood at Cape Roger Curtis, it was a bit unrealistic to assign a volunteer committee to come up with alternative options at the Cape, especially in such a short time frame that the owners wanted us to have this unfold. And a community poll to ascertain community willingness to open the door to these discussions felt like it would lack specificity, given that we had so few details from the owners about exactly what options might be considered and for what price. As we've discovered with the National Park vote, when the details are vague, the community is very reluctant to move forward. So I'm hoping that the owners will feel confident enough in this council to invest in the creation of alternative plans for the Cape that will help them achieve some of their goals, and at the same time help us realize some of our community dreams. Councillor Dunst will give more specific details of his conversations with the owners at this time. Is that right? So respectfully submitted, and I guess I'll retreat.
Well, that's a surprise.
I want to speak to it now.
It will not take long. So,
I'd like to know what's
Yeah,
up.
I'd like to know what's going on.
after that much of an announcement, I do not really have much to announce. As a matter of fact, I had 2 meetings, you're correct. The first one was at the opening of the golf course clubhouse, informal. I didn't expect to be there. We had lunch together. At that time, they told me that they would call me on Monday or Tuesday early in the week because they wanted to talk to me, which they did. We met for lunch. I would have to guess what they had hoped to learn from that meeting, but as it turned out, they did not really expect me to be there as a council member. I was, we made that very clear, or I made it very clear that I was not representing council. And as a matter of fact, we met about for 2 hours, but became very clear. I think they wanted to have my opinion about what potential the land would actually have for an alternative planning. And that goes back to probably 5-6 years at that time when actually the partnership which I had with them was dissolved because we could not agree on the course of action. And probably in hindsight, they have expressed that on a few occasions, they regret not having followed my advice at that time. So we had quite differences about that. And they probably acknowledge that very few know the land better than I do and the potential within the land. So having said all this, they were curious what a committee or council or the community would actually come up with. They said, well, they cannot come up with anything better than you could come up, because you have the authority to decide what to do with it other than changes to the land use. And it will cost a lot of money now to go back to explore the options, because you need the experts, and I'm not the expert to tell you. So it was a good meeting, it was productive, was it amicable? Yes, but they didn't really like what I told them, which they ultimately accepted. They said, well, if there's any chance to come up with something meaningful, it has to address the land, and it's not something where somebody on the table can decide about density and trade-offs. The plan itself, the land use, has to be the best fitting use for the land. The tragedy has happened. It's what happened to the land is a travesty. So can something be salvaged, remedied? I don't know, but what has been subdivided already limits what still can be done. Because whenever you talk about densification, I'm not necessarily suggesting densification, the area to be densified where you could create a community was exactly on the west side and more the northwest side than the southwest side. Now that has been subdivided. The rest of the land has all kinds of limitations. It contains major options for still parks. Actually, there is a lot of potential to create very good areas for parks, being conservancy or for recreational purposes. But for further residential development, the areas are limited. So that was not a news which they were ready for. And they said, well then, if you have any ideas, let me know, which they didn't have. And they said, well then, the only one probably you could ask is the chief planner. I think his name is Paul. Fensky is his last name.
Yeah.
He said, well, he knows the land probably as well as I did, and Peter Busby before him. Ask him. And they said, well, that will cost a lot of money. They said, well, so be it, but don't expect that the public will pay for that. So if you are even interested in entering, you hire Paul Fensky. And he said, well, how long will that take? I said, well, a plan will take at least 2 months, but it will not take him more, in my estimation, than about 2 weeks to find out if there is potential. And they agreed to do that and to finance it. It was a meeting. It was ultimately we walked out and I think we felt good, but it was not a particularly the task ahead. If something useful comes out, it will be tough. And I ignore right now about public sentiment. I just ignore that for the time being. Just to come up with a plan which does justice to what Roger Curtis could have been. It's like you have a Michelangelo painting and somebody had botched it up and now you repair it. That's at best. So do we have an artist who can do a good repair? If anybody could do it, probably Paul Fensky. And he is gifted planners, like gifted artists. They have a great pride in what they're doing, and I see probably Roger Curtis, as it turns out now, as a major black mark on his career. Like anybody who understands lands and fields passionately would see that today as a very bad black mark on Bowen Island's history. So, let's see what Paul comes up with.
In the next 2 weeks, okay?
Look,
Is that-
I was on my own, and I just said, well, if he, with his knowledge of the land and his, I would call it brilliant, doesn't come up with something which is inspiring enough to suggest it's worth proceeding, then we might as well say, well, it's not worth it. It's not the plan, just figuring out, is it worth proceeding? Is there enough potential?
Right.
I know, it's okay. I think what Wolfgang was saying, 2-month window, but the actual work takes 2 weeks. So,
Oh,
you know,
okay,
like
sure.
somebody, he's not gonna drop everything and work
No,
on
no.
CRC. So.
But it's like you having a car you love, but it's shot, and you turn it over to a mechanic, so well, is it worth actually investing in it? Or something else?
I think it's the once bitten, twice shy issue that we have here, that they're
Well, the fact that they're willing to.
they're reluctant to bring it back into the public forum, and possibly rightly so. And they're looking for another way to maybe revisit it, but it's tough to revisit. That place it's not nice. I agree with Mr. Granger here when he says that it's not nice as far as access, as far as what's happened to the land, and there's nothing we can do about it unless the owners want to play ball with us. So that's where we are really.
So far, Roger Curtis has only left victims behind, and they are kind of. We shouldn't ignore their ethnic background. They take great pride to be progressive, but contributing members to a community. And in hindsight, they don't think that they have contributed what they could have contributed, to none of their fault. So it's
It's sad.
like
Okay. We've